So what we're going to cover in this lesson is how do you gain UX experience to put in your portfolio, and also tips on how to create your portfolio once you've got that experience. So first of all, let's talk about gaining UX experience. On a lot of Facebook groups, I've seen a bit of a worrying trend recently. These are the sorts of posts, I've decided to become a UX designer and I've told I need a UX portfolio. Have you got any tips? The issue I have with this is that a portfolio is supposed to demonstrate your experience and knowledge of the UX process. So before you rush out and decide to change your careers and realize you need a UX portfolio, you need to actually get some experience. But before you get experience, you really need to learn some of the UX fundamentals first. So my suggestion would be step one, first make sure you've learned the UX fundamentals and really understand that end-to-end UX design process. Then once you've got that sort of theoretical knowledge, if you like, step two, then you want to go and gain or get that UX experience. So how does one go about getting UX experience? I'm going to cover 4 different ways that you can gain experience to put in your portfolio. First thing you can do is volunteer your time. You might have a friend who runs a small business, or you might approach a charity or a not-for-profit organisation. You might go and talk to them and say, look, can I redesign your website? Go out and do a little bit of research for them, do some designs, test them. So do a sort of a process, a UX design process, maybe on your friend's business. The second thing you can do is invent opportunities. Pick a site or a system. Maybe go to a website and go, I really don't like their website experience. Maybe it's not amazing. Then maybe go through that user-centered design and sort of redesign it. It could be any website that you use. You don't necessarily have to get their permission. You're just going through, pretending they were a client and going through that process with them. So invent opportunities. The third thing you could do is seek unpaid work experience or an internship. Go to a company or an organisation and say, look, I'd love to just sort of ghost your team for a few weeks or a couple of weeks, offer to work for free. You're going to learn a lot, and when you start adding value, people will sort of go, oh, she's actually quite good. And then you never know, that might open up the doors for a job there, but if nothing else, it'll help you get some experience. The fourth thing you can do is work on a project as part of a more formal UX course. So employers are looking for juniors that really go out of their way to gain experience. Now, when you're creating your portfolio, I want to go through some tips and what do you include in your UX portfolio. But first of all, let's discuss what a UX portfolio actually is. So a UX portfolio showcases a person's highlights, their skills, their experience, capabilities, even your personality. It also indicates to employers that you've taken the time to represent yourself in the best possible light. And it shows your understanding of the UX design process and what part of UX you're particularly sort of good at. I want to go through now 8 tips for creating a UX portfolio. Number 1, you want to understand your audience. As a good UX designer, this is something we need to do. So think about your resume, think about your portfolio. Who is the audience for that? The audience is time-poor employers. They're not going to read paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of text. They want to really get a quick snapshot of your capabilities and your experience. The other thing is you want to follow a standard format, a familiar pattern that employers who are quickly going in there, they know what to look for. The other thing you might want to do is completely deviate from that and be intentionally different to really sort of stand out from the crowd. Number 3 is you want to pick relevant case studies. So sometimes less is more. You don't put in everything that you've ever worked on. No employer or recruiter is going to look at everything. So you want to highlight the relevant methods for the projects that you've worked on and the methods that you're really good at or that you're particularly interested in working for. So if you're after a UX researcher role, I would focus more on the research methods in your portfolio. If you're a UI designer more, you might focus on some of the visuals and the designs that you've done. Number 4, you want to present yourself up front. If you want to be hired as a UXer, you need to label yourself as a UXer. I've sometimes seen visual designers and they go visual designer and UX designer, and you look at their portfolio and it's all visuals. And you go, oh, this is just a visual designer who's learnt UX. So if you want to be a UX designer, label yourself as a UX designer. Be upfront and just say that's what I am now, even if you're not confident in that. Number 5 is to clearly state your role. For each project, make it clear to the employer what role you've played. I've sometimes received portfolios from people as a prospective employer, and I'm going to go, this looks fantastic, but how much of this did they do versus the team? So make it really clear to employers what you actually did on that project, your role or your contribution. Number 6, focus on the process. It's not all about the shiny UX artifacts or souvenirs you've created. Visual design portfolio, yeah, it's totally about the design and creativity. But for UX design, employers are after process. So how did you go about doing that project? What was the end-to-end user-centered design process? Do you understand that process? So make sure you articulate the process as much as the artifacts. Number 7, use photos. This is a way to communicate that process. So not just photos of your design, it might be photos of a workshop that you've conducted with people sticking post-it notes on a wall. It could be photos of a test session with sitting next to a participant. So take photos of the process, but also photos of the research or screenshots of the research, some of the design artifacts, your wireframe. Show the progression of wireframe through to an electronic prototype, maybe through to the final visual concept. So show that progression. Number 8, we want to provide a clear and consistent structure for each project. Have a clear heading. What was the problem you were trying to solve for that project? What was your approach? How did you go about tackling that problem? What was your role in that project? And what was the outcome? That's a typical structure. Number 9, you want to use the right tools. There's lots of online tools, which we cover in our UX courses, but there's lots of online tools that you can use to create your portfolio and also share your portfolio online. So hopefully I've given you a few tips today to help you gain experience and then to create your portfolio. Next lesson, we're going to talk about some of the steps you might do or take for getting that UX job that you want. Once you've got that experience and you've got that training, how do you go about getting that UX job?